Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Showcase webinar series. Today's webinar is titled Innovation and Complex Lifting Solutions, 2 Modular Spreader Beam Studies that Exceeded Safety, Time, and Budgetary Goals. Whew. Okay, so we have webinar host Mike Parnell on the line today, as well as a number of guests that have been kind enough to join us today, including Pat Clark. He's the National Rental Support Manager from Lifting Gear Hire. And I see folks are still coming in, but I want to jump right in and get to the meat of today's webinar. So let's get going. So if this is your first time in the Showcase webinar series, I want to share a little bit about ITI before we get to today's presentation. At ITI here, we strive to be the world leader in educational and technical services for any organization that utilizes cranes, rigging, or load handling equipment. We've been fortunate enough to work with a number of amazing companies, many of whom you see on the screen there, and many more that we're unable to list just because of space. These guys here are the real stars of the show. So our training and technical services team is diverse in where they hail from, as well as their professional backgrounds involving cranes and rigging. We currently have 14 full-time trainers and consultants, including 2 based in Canada and 2 in Brazil. I honestly wish I had more time to sing the individual praises of each and every one of these guys, but we would be here all day, so I can't do that. If you want to learn a little bit more about them, their backgrounds, their experiences, within the industry, I invite you guys to visit iti.com/staff. And each one of these guys has a profile on there, and I mean, if you have some time, it's a great read. I'm not going to read all of these courses, and we do have many more that aren't listed on the screen, but I want to highlight a couple. The Fundamentals of Rigging Engineering program is something new. It's going to launch in January of 2015. I'll have more on that in a moment. Some other of our most in-demand courses include the Master Rigger course, rigging gear inspection, mobile crane inspection, and like I said, there's many, many more. We're lucky enough to offer, we call them field services, but it's basically our consulting services, our consulting branch. They're not limited to what you see on the screen there, but these, again, are some of the most in-demand things that we help service for all organizations. You probably figured this out already, but I'll repeat it one more time. This is the Showcase webinar series. We've done these actually one every month since, I believe, March of 2012. So the bullet points on the screen are our past presentations from 2014 only. All of these and all of the ones going back to 2012 are available for rewatch, the recordings. They're on the ITI website, so visit iti.com/showcase, and on the right-hand side of your screen there'll be an icon to view past webinars. And you can access those at any time. They're a great resource. I mean, obviously training and education can't happen all the time, but these are a great refresher if there's a topic that piques your interest. And of course, that's a free resource to everybody. I mentioned in my opening slide that Mike Parnell is your host today, and Mike's been an active member of the crane and rigging industry for over 35 years, including nearly 30 now as the founder, president, and technical director of ITI. He's worked diligently with the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, or ASME, as a committee member and vice chair and chair in 2 cases on the B30 committee that deals with cranes and rigging, and chair of the P30 committee that deals with lift planning. So, yeah, as I said, Mike's actually on the line with us today, so I'm going to turn it over to him for just a moment.
Thanks very much, Jonah. We're really excited to have everybody with us, particularly all of our participants. I've had some great dealings with Lifting Gear Hire, and we know about Clausen Structures and BMWC and the outstanding work that they do. We've also had the opportunity to use and recommend and consult for clients that needed special lifting equipment, spreader bars, beams, and so on, and we're able to turn that customer group over to Lifting Gear Hire to get special load packages removed, shipboard, and some other in working environments around the country and North America. So they're a terrific resource, and we're looking forward to a great presentation today. This particular presentation has leanings towards a special program offered through the rigging engineering program that is handled by Dave Dewar. Most of you know Dave out of Houston, super engineer and a great resource. And the B30.20, which is the ASME document for below-yoke lifting devices, and also the BTH-1 design of lifting devices. Dave's a leader in both of those committees, and Lifting Gear Hire's equipment certainly falls under that oversight. And the equipment offered by LGH is just top-notch, and we hope that you get to see a number of innovative ways in which that it can help expedite projects, and then be able to downstream participate in some of the rigging engineering. I'd like to go ahead and have Jonah make the introduction for the takeoff for the program today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mike. As he mentioned, Patrick and his team, they're available if you want to view the webcam. I know it's very useful and valuable to some folks if they want to follow along with the audio, and as Pat's conversing with the folks from BMWC and Clausen Structures. So as Mike mentioned, and I got to reiterate, thank you, all of you guys, for taking time out today and helping and with this presentation and sharing these case studies. That, I mean, just me looking through what you've sent over in the presentation, they're extremely interesting, and I believe the whole audience is going to be on the edge of their seat seeing how you guys figured out these lifting solutions. So I think that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over the screen to Pat right now and let you guys take it away.
You got it. Thanks, Jonah, and thanks, Mike, and thanks for all the folks who are joining us out there. Those are certainly big shoes to fill from some of those other webinars and some of the great topics. I've had a chance to sit on some of those previous, and we hope to live up to half those expectations. So with that being said, I want to introduce myself as well as the fellow panelists here today. Again, my name is Pat Clark. I'm with Lifting Gear Hire Corporation. I am the National Support Manager here. I got my start in the field. Much of my career was spent running around working with customers on site, both plant personnel as well as subcontractors, and really helping them find suitable solutions for their needs. Since that time, I've learned quite a bit, not only from my own training, but also what I learned from my customers. And we hope to have that as a goal today in the presentation as well. In addition to that, I transitioned into a sales management not too long ago, where I manage a group of folks that also do the same thing, is providing equipment solutions to our customers on a national level. I also participate in the sales knowledge as well as the application knowledge of our sales force. So with that said, I want to start off introducing you to the folks from BMWC. First, we have John Manta. He's been with BMWC for 7 years and has been in the construction industry as a whole since 1988. He's the VP of Marketing and Sales, and he's involved in many of their projects, and we're just delighted to have him today and to share with some of his ideas and his experience as well. In addition to that, we have Justin Knapp. Excuse me. Justin was an iron worker for most of his 20-plus year career. Since that time, he's been involved in many critical projects with BMWC, one of many, and one of them, of course, he's going to share with us today. From Clausen Structures, and owner is Chrissy Clausen. She's been involved in the construction industry for well over 10 years and is quickly becoming one of the most recognized names as a premier steel erector. Alongside of her is Pat Kleewig. Pat has been in the construction business for over 20 years himself, and he's also going to share some of his knowledge in their special projects as well. So before we move on, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about Clausen Structures?
We've been in business for 6 years. We're a specialized steel erector. I'm certified with the state of Illinois for rebar, and currently trying to get my my certification for structural steel.
Beautiful. And John, how about yourself? Tell us a little bit about the folks that aren't familiar with BMWC.
Okay, well, first of all, we just, for Justin and I, we want to say thank you for having us. Lifting Gear Hire has been a great supplier of ours, and that's one of the reasons we agreed to do this today. Our relationship with Lifting Gear goes back at least 20 years, and we actually use them. Many projects are across the country. And for those facility owners and other people who may be watching or listening today that may not be familiar with BMWC, just a couple bullet points about our company before we turn it over to Pat and Justin to talk about some of the projects. Our company has been, we're approaching our 60th year in business. We started as a small outfit in 1955 down in Indianapolis, Indiana, and today have become one of the largest industrial construction companies across North America. In fact, for those who are familiar with Engineering News-Record magazine, Engineering News-Record magazine just selected BMWC Constructors as their Midwestern Contractor of the Year, which we're very proud of. But the places we focus on large, heavy industrial industries and market segments: electric power, refining, chemical, oil and gas, pharmaceutical, aerospace, semiconductors, some of those markets, food and beverage. And we're going to talk about one of those projects here today. In general, some of the big things about our company that we'd like people to know: from a safety standpoint, we have a concept called Safety for Life. That concept has helped us now achieve over 13 million consecutive craft hours worked without lost time injury, which we're very proud of, and that number continues. We hire all the heavy crafts, we direct hire them. So one of the things for those people listening and watching today, we are able to be experts in hiring all the heavy crafts: pipe fitter, boilermaker, iron worker, laborers, teamsters, operators, to take the subcontractor markups out of that for those of you that choose to select us to do your projects. And one unique thing about the company is we have a very strict non-nepotism policy. Once you come to work for BMWC, unlike other contractors, no relatives of your company can ever come, or your family, no relatives can come to work for the company. And what that does is it allows us to bring the best and brightest from across the country, and allows people to come in and rise to the highest level they're able to, regardless of the relationship with their family members, which for a contractor is kind of unusual, as some of you probably know. So that's some of the kind of high-level pieces that people who may not know BMWC might like to know, and I'll turn it back to Pat.
Beautiful. Thanks, John. Well said, and congratulations on your 60-year anniversary. When I stop and think about that, it's hard to believe, but we've been working with BMWC for a third of your tenure, so that's exciting. Another number that, as we talked about the experience level in this room, it equates to about 70 years worth of industry knowledge. So again, if we can pass a little bit of that knowledge on to you folks, I think we've done our job here. With that said, I think that will dovetail nicely into Justin here. So Justin, talking about this project, how did you even get involved from the start of this project? How did you find out about it?
Well, let me talk about the scope real quick first. Basically, what it was a capital project within one of the local refineries in the Chicago area, and it was simply setting two PDC modules. They're about 15 feet by 52 feet, weighing a little over 125,000 pounds. So it was transporting the modules through the refinery and taking them to the site to be set, picking them off the trailers, and simply just setting them on the piers that were just installed.
Okay.
It seems extremely simple, right?
Yeah. So how did you find out about it?
So I was working on a different project, again within the refinery, and I was in a meeting for it, and I actually overheard a meeting next door of some of the complications that they were running into and setting these PVC modules. This wasn't the first time that it was that they set these modules on site, but normally what they do is they offload them in a loading area that's approximately about a mile outside of the refinery. They transport them in on transporters. They will actually transport the modules in between the existing foundations. They'll raise them hydraulically, drive right through the piers, and then when it gets to the position to lay them down, release the hydraulics, and set them on the piers.
At that time, they weren't able to do that, right?
No, unfortunately, they weren't able to do that this time because there was some existing power lines that came into play, and these power lines were very important to the refinery. In fact, it would have shut down several of the units if they took these power lines out of play. But what they did have a lifting mechanism that was scoped out in the specifications, and unfortunately, this was not available. So now they're looking into a time and a schedule crunch of when they're actually going to be able to set these modules. If they were to take the power lines out of play, they would have to do it during a slowdown, which would have a slowdown or shutdown or a turnaround, which would have extended the project. It would have delayed the project significantly.
So you have, from the point that you're awarded this project, the point of completion, how much time passed?
By the time that I heard about it, we were looking at about 3 to 4 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks.
So it was down to crunch time on.
And again, that would have included having the specialized lifting beam or apparatus.
The specialized lifting beam that was not available with that time frame. They would have had to have one fabricated, which you would have had to have it engineered, fabricated, certified, load tested, and then delivered to site within that 3 to 4 week period, which did not seem likely at the time.
Right. So you get the job, and then you have a set of goals you have to achieve, and talk a little bit about those.
Actually, the way that first of all, the way that we got the job itself was as I was leaving my meeting, I peeked my head in, and I did know the guys, and I told them, hey, why don't you give me the opportunity to look at this project for a couple days, and I'll get back to you, and maybe I can offer up some suggestions to you. So they agreed, and I walked the site, became familiar with the scope, saw the hazards that they were dealing with and the complications. Went back to my office. The first call that I made was to Lifting Gear Hire. I worked several projects in the past with them that were successful, and within 2 hours they were in my office. And from there we started to design a lifting apparatus using lifting gears, modular setup, and we had to mock the lifting apparatus that was in the specifications, the pick points.
So we'll take a look at that down the road in a few other slides. But again, when it came to your major goals, you guys certainly wanted to make sure it was a safe job, that of course it came in under budget and on time, and that seemed to be a pretty significant challenge. You now have 3 weeks to do this, and then if you can elaborate, what day of the week did you guys have to do this job on, and why?
All this work had to be completed on Saturday and Sunday, the actual setting of the modules. This was because of the congestion of the area. The projects that were currently being performed in the plant, I believe at the time they were allowing close to 12,000 contractors in the gate daily during the week. In order to do this project, we had to have several road closures. So again, on the weekends with less congestion and with emergency vehicles not being able to make it down the road, that's why they had chose the weekend. And also the PDCs, that was the on-time delivery date as well.
So again, I understand that, just to highlight that, this is a job that is a maintenance project that's happening within one of the largest capital projects in North America at the time. So you have 12,000 contractors coming and going, so that's a pretty big challenge in itself. Walk me through on your plan that you envision, if you would.
So the plan itself, anytime that BMWC is planning a project, we keep in mind safety first and foremost, and that's what we plan our projects around. And that's extremely important to us. And myself, with my background as an iron worker, I feel like I'm sensitive to safety as well, because I was that guy. I was the guy that was hands-on tools. You know, I was out there where the rubber met the road, and I know what these guys are going through, and you know, some of the things that they have to deal with, and from there, that's how we started the planning of this. So I basically, plan started with lifting gear and designing the module that would be able to pick these modules, and presenting that to the refinery, them accepting it. From there, everything had to go up to a third-party engineering company to make sure that our design was capable for the capacity. From there, we looked at the transportation of the modules through the refinery, picked the best route. We decided out the crane that we would be needing, the position of the crane, laid all that out. And to us, that's a high level of planning that is done on the management side. And when we're comfortable with our plan, then what we do is we'll bring in the supervisors to the guys in the field, and then we will start going through our plan with the supervisors, and then that's actually where our plan evolves.
So the plan is accepted, and the time when you actually get the rigging out there and actually test it, right? This is going along with the idea of safety is your number one goal here. So can you walk me through of how long this lift actually took and why?
Well, the lift itself from trailer to piers was only about 20 minutes. Correct. And again, we like to, that's the success of the planning. And, you know, and plus, you know, our plan evolved with the input from the field personnel as well. So, the equipment itself was delivered a couple days before by lifting gear. It was assembled, and it was ready to be picked as soon as the modules showed up on site. And we escorted everything in. We have our rigging crew that hooked up the rigging, swung over the modules, hooked up the modules, got some tension on them, and then we stop. And we get all the parties that are involved with the lift come together. We muster, we talk about everything that's going on right now, what's going to happen step by step. Everybody knows what their role is. Everybody knows the communication. Everybody knows that they can stop this pick, as critical as it is, at any time. And with that, we do a team break, and we get the show on the road.
Beautiful. All right, so from an engineering standpoint, you obviously had to submit some prints to the plant itself, facility to get accepted. So the next slide shows just that. We start with a concept, right? We start with our drawing of really how you envision this. And in part, it's because this is how the manufacturer recommended that they had, correct me if I'm wrong, 8-point pick, and each one of those slings had to be vertical, correct? From a standpoint of the modular, what type of challenges did you have, I should say rather, of having those slings in a vertical fashion?
Well, the first thing we wanted to do was design our lifting apparatuses to be able to accept both modules. So with that, it was just one assembly and one dish cell. And the design on the left is what we had come up with, and this was able to work. The first module, the lifting lugs are on the outside of the module, so it was cradling it. But the issue was with the second pick, since these modules come together for a tight fit up, one side had to go through access panels. So the lifting lugs were actually inside the module itself. Did not leave us for much room for air, you know, and that's why we had to have the straight picks. Minimal degree when we were coming up on it.
Okay, so from a concept point of view, you have a major header beam coming down to two subordinate box beams, rather, correct? And of course, in this drawing, you don't see that those slings going through the roof access. And then next, we start going over from concept to actually looking at the beams themselves, which ones you're going to select, and some of the forces that they'll incur, and getting then more into specifics of the type of wire rope slings you're going to be using, as well as into the endless polyester slings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Moving on to the next slide here. Now we actually have some engineered drawings where we have the specified equipment there. So from a perspective of you hooking this up, it makes it fairly easy. What type of challenges do you have as far as any loading or from a crane standpoint? You had mentioned that there were some high voltage wires. There's some other wires there, and then we'll also see some other challenges you have there. But were there any challenges with the crane and rigging then?
With the crane itself, actually the size of the crane, we had a 550-ton rope, and anybody that has worked with this machine in the past knows that we're trying to maneuver this thing into a tight area. We have to make sure that the ground is stable in that area, so that's all tested beforehand. And actually, we had to go through the week prior to setting up this crane, and we had to rework the ground, which BMWC did. In order for it to be stable and suitable for the weight that it was going to be handling. As far as that goes, everything went smooth. The issue is now what you're looking at here. If you can see the power lines. You can actually see a sleeve on the top one. The only use of that sleeve is just for a visual. That's so the operators and the guys that are working the project itself can see how close the module is getting to the lines. It does not offer any kind of safety protection at all.
And are those lines active?
Those lines are active. Those are the lines that, if you can see right now, if you were to pull in those modules, you would have had to hoist them up above the piers, the existing piers, and it would have been into those lines, and those lines would have been taken out of service.
And then how about the pipe racks just adjacent to it? Are those active?
Those are also active.
Okay.
Those are process lines. We get within about 15 feet of those on the thick as well, which also makes sure that the crane capacity that we're using is the right crane. Obviously, you don't want that crane goes over and you're going to have problems, but if that crane goes over into those lines, you're specifically going to have some major problems.
Yeah. In addition to that, we talked about safety. We'll go back to it again. That was no accident, correct? That was blatant. You guys planned for that all the time, from the planning to the final setting. With that many people out there, can you talk about any incidences whereby the plan didn't go to fruition?
This project had 0 incidences, 0 injuries, and that is something that within our planning that BMWC prides themselves on.
So it was deemed a success. That being said, even the most successful plays, you can come back and take a look at them and readdress them in hindsight. Was there anything that you would do differently?
In this particular case, no. I don't think there's anything else we could have done differently. Like I said before, we finished the project safely. We finished it on schedule, and we actually finished it under budget because we were able to eliminate some of the equipment that they normally use to set these modules.
It's a big one. Yeah, there was no disruption, of course, to the facility itself, which was huge. I think one thing that you mentioned to me in talking is that schedule was key with these modules coming in, right? If there was any delays, when would have been the next opportunity for you to set these modules?
It probably wouldn't have been for several months. Your PDCs are the nucleus of the whole project itself. They have to be set before any of the electrical work can continue, and the piping work can continue, as well as the these have to be in place project is at a stall at this point until these are set.
Well, anything else from either of you gentlemen to add about this? Certainly seemed like a success, and you guys literally thinking, well, in this case, rather, I guess, inside the box beams. But anything else to add on here?
I would just probably throw in that, as Justin had mentioned, and Pat, you asked him the questions, is that the trick to making some of these lifts, and we do a lot of them all across the country, if you do the planning properly, which Justin just described, a lot of effort amongst a lot of people, the collaborative efforts to go in to put the plan together and come up with creative solutions allows you to do lifts like this in the shortest period of time, right? So your greatest risk, your greatest hazard, that the moment that lift is up in the air is when you're at risk. So the fact that Justin was able to get this done and the lift itself only took a few minutes is a testimony to sort of the planning that he and our client and lifting gear and the rest of the people involved did, and that's kind of what we do across the country.
Well, thank you again. And since that time when this project was completed, we actually now offer true corner mod pieces. So we don't have to make up the pieces and assemblies like you see here. You can still do it, but we have corning that's now available. So again, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. With that said, I want to now bring Clausen Structures into the picture and have them share their case study with us as well. Why don't you guys start? Why don't you tell us a little bit about this project, how you knew about it, where it was located, and how you threw your hat in the ring.
Okay. The project is a pedestrian bridge that was it's in Peoria. Hein Construction contacted us to bid it. We bid it. We got it. It was a two-span bridge, pedestrian bridge. Each span weighing about 160 pounds. We did the pick with a 500-ton crane and 300-ton crane from an Imperial Crane. Was difficult because it was between power lines. With at night, and it was very, very cold. So
Pat, why don't you elaborate on, and once you guys have this, what the thought process as a project manager is then?
Sure. I didn't bid the job, but I came on in January with this project. So, you know, you look at it on a piece of paper. It's always best to go down to see the job site, to see what was down there for the pre-planning. The overall process probably took about a week. By the time we got down there, assembled the sections and set the two spans into place. As far as the pre-planning, that took several weeks. You know, we had to make several trips down to Peoria, so we really didn't have the luxury of going out whenever we wanted to with a local job. So we went down, visited with Hein Construction, looked at the job site, which was key. We had a bunch of power lines around there. There was a major artery road that went into to Peoria, so we had to monitor the traffic situation, and we did some field measurements and put that into what we use AutoCAD into engineering, and looked at our clearances and our overall lift radiuses to make sure everything that was going to happen happened safely.
So on this particular one, you had planned on having some of the sections fabricated, brought in on site.
Mm-hmm.
You guys were going to fabricate them, complete the connections, and
right.
again, rig them, launch them, set them into place. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to go that method? And part B of that is rigging. You have a multitude of options. Why would you have selected the spreader beam option?
Well, one was first and foremost the safety. We use the two spreader beams. They're short. They're easy to handle. It shortened up our rigging a lot. It enabled our cranes to be able to make the pick better. If you had longer rigging on a bridge like this, you had longer boom lengths, which didn't help for the capacity of the crane. So, with that being said, shortening up the rigging, enabled us to be able to make the pick essentially when we had it together. There is a total of 6 sections, 3 sections per span, each section weighing about 42,000 pounds. And we went down there to assemble it during the day from the fabricator, and once that was assembled, at night we had to set the span over the highway just simply because there's traffic. We had a small window of opportunity to do that.
You're making it sound really easy. But at the end of the day,
Well,
just like any project, you had challenges, right?
Yeah. As long as we had our pre-planning, taking a look at the job site, making sure that the guys understood exactly what it was that they were up against, and the task that needed to be completed, it went really smooth.
So your biggest challenge is, talk about the weather here.
It was really cold.
Oh, 10 below.
Yeah.
10 below, and this is Chicago winter.
Oh,
These are
But
record.
yes, and we kind of needed it to be that cold though due to the ground conditions for the cranes, so we didn't want it to get any warmer.
Yeah, at that time we noticed we were experiencing a freeze and thaw cycle. We really weren't sure what to expect. High construction was getting prepared to bring in a bunch of stone and rock to set up a couple of stable pads for our two cranes, one being the 500-ton crane, which you can see on the right-hand side of the drawing there. I'm sorry, this is the other one. On the left-hand side was the 500-ton. In the center, there was a 300-ton crane. So that the center point right there was the challenge. Had that thaw, I've been able to bring rock in and set up a suitable pad. But fortunately, looking on the bright side, working in the cold, the ground conditions were such that we didn't have to worry about that.
Okay, so you're going to talk a little bit about elaborate more on the cold. We also had, similar to BMWC, you guys had some overhead power lines, as well as you're going to talk about some fall hazards with your personnel, and as well as shutting down the public right away for some period of time. So let's start off with the winter again. It's 10 below, right? It's not conducive for a lot of things, including the crane.
Right.
People, I think you mentioned when we initially started talking about this, when it's that cold, it's hard to think.
It's hard to think, yeah.
It's hard to think clearly. So you're up against that. So again, from a standpoint of safety, how you maintain level of safety?
You just make sure you got the guys understand what's going on ahead of time in a warm environment, so they can give you their attention. You try to take all the thinking out of it prior to getting out on the job site. So that was one of the goals. You get out there, and it's really hard to focus in on what you're doing since it's such a cold environment out there.
And Chris, you also mentioned the ground conditions. There was ice all around you as well, right? So at night, icy, there's a lot of slip potential as well for the workers. But let's not talk about switch to working at night.
Yeah, we had to, as you see in that picture right there, that was the first pick that we made. That was a 210-foot long span. We initially assembled those three sections on the ground in one of those lanes during the day. You only had, we were only given one lane to be able to assemble those spans together. So we were working around cars, and so at night, it's pretty typical for the, they had to shut down the highway. They gave us a window of opportunity for 40 minutes. We actually set it in 20 minutes. Everything went smoothly to all the pre-planning and having the right personnel out there, just understanding what the tasks were at hand.
Talk about your crew and how you guys assembled them.
Well, we had
We have a foreman. We have kind of a core group, but we were in Peoria, so we had to use some of their guys.
But the core group has been together for quite some time.
Yeah.
So again, it's I think someone used the analogy before about a sports team. Chemistry is key here.
It is.
These guys know each other, so that really probably helped with communication as well as the execution.
right.
Well, let's go now back to assembling this in the daytime here. It was loud, wasn't it? Because you're assembling this right next to cars rushing by.
That's correct.
Good. So you resorted to using hand signals in addition to radios?
Yeah, no, they really didn't. Yes, we did use hand signals. Didn't use radios out there. It was more effective just to establish that kind of communication with the crane and the crew ahead of time.
And the radios might have been frozen.
Yeah. And their hands, right.
Regarding the first lift that you had to do, that was actually done at night.
Mm-hmm.
So you had a full major shutdown. I think you already prefaced that you had 40 minutes to accomplish the task, but you completed in 20.
Correct.
Is that pretty standard for you, or do you normally take up?
We actually get less time than that when it's, we're doing a lot of tollway work right now, and it's usually 15-minute shutdown. You get a girder or two up there, and
what happens if you surpass that time then?
we haven't been in that situation.
There's some significant.
There is fines and stuff, but
large fines.
We're never going to have that problem. So
exactly. Well, the public gets upset, and it doesn't make you look good, of course.
So talk about that. You had mentioned before when we had initially started talking about this, the public. There was an audience, wasn't there?
There was newspapers,
the news. Yeah,
dogs.
I think it was Channel 24. They had their kids out there on a Thursday night, and it was freezing.
The coolers too. People were drinking at 10 degrees.
Yeah, it looked, yes.
And it was late,
believe it.
you know.
Right. As far as lifting gear, again, selecting the modular spreader beams, how did we enter the equation?
Well, I called up Jim, and we were discussing a couple of options. I kind of gave him the idea that I wanted to, well, I gave him the task at hand with this pedestrian bridge. We had overhead wires. I had a small ceiling height with the cranes. We had a long radius. We only had so much boom to work with. So I needed to shorten up the rigging to allow for all those obstacles, if you will. So Jim and I went over the size of the bridge, what the allowed pick points were on the bridge, and he came up with that Mod 50 spreader beam that would be the best for using on this particular bridge. It was nice because we had one setup, one set of rigging. We didn't have to change out the rigging. We used the same rigging for not only making the pick for both the spans, but for also assembling the three sections of the bridge together.
So you had other options as far as rigging was, right, concerned. What made you go down this road as opposed to maybe a fixed length spreader or something else?
Well, that reason right there is just the height. We had a restricted ceiling height to work with, and these were fairly light to add on to the weight, the overall weight with the rigging and the crane.
You mentioned before that on any successful project, you have some people involved, right, that help make it a success. You can talk a little bit about the team here.
We had, first of all, Hein Construction, the general contractor. They were able to provide us with the public announcements of shutting down the highway, and as we mentioned earlier, that there was quite a crew out there. There was a lot of people, so it was a big deal. Yeah. Also, just giving us the access we need. They had to shut down a lane for us to be able to assemble the three sections for the first pick together, and also we had Imperial Crane. We had a gentleman come down, Jay Moonkatch, come down and analyze the job site, to see the job site, to be able to fill them in as to what they were up against. The power lines were all over the place, so obviously safety was a major concern, and making sure we got the right cranes, and that those guys knew what they were getting into. We also had, for shipping out the 6 sections, we had Cameron Bridgeworks. They were responsible for shipping out the sections ahead of time for us to assemble them in the field, and obviously lifting gear higher, making it possible to keep our ceiling heights down with the spreader beams and the correct rigging.
And most of all, the iron workers.
Oh, absolutely.
The iron workers were amazing. They did a great job. They were freezing the butts off, and they did it. So they did it quickly, and safely. So
right.
It's a big deal.
Both the iron workers and the operators were. Without a great crew, you can do all the pre-planning, but without those guys, it wouldn't happen. It really did great.
As a project manager, you also incorporate CAD quite a bit. And
I do.
This particular project was no different, right? This is where, from a development standpoint, you worked with CAD. You also worked with Google Maps and lining with what the surveys had given you, or was that something you've done yourself? Did you do all the measurements yourself to make sure that they lined up?
Yeah, we actually went down there ahead of time, part of the pre-planning, and found a fixed benchmark that was in relationship to what was down there compared to what Google Earth had. So I was able to capture that image, and just ironically enough, it actually showed the job site, which even helped that much more. And so I inserted that into my overall CAD drawing, and was able to lay out the cranes and the bridge, the staging areas of where everything was going to wind up at. Right here, what you're looking at are the cribbing points and the picking points. Well, the one thing I had to keep in mind is that on the span 1 up there, there's 2 points, one at each end of where we had the crane blocks at, the picking points. That one right there that you had your hand on was moved in quite a bit further because that end right there was underneath the power lines. If we had an option to move that span further away, we would have, but unfortunately there was a public entrance into a parking lot, so we had to keep the bridge where it was at. So anyhow, we moved that rigging in to help compensate, well, number one, to keep away from the lines, where that crane line was at, and 2, as we were lifting, to keep away from the elevation. There's a couple of shots right there of the pre-planning with a 3D lift plan. The big red blobs you see there were the danger zone, if you will, your allowed OSHA clearances of the power lines within relationship to the bridge pick.
So what type of voltage were you working with here?
Well, we had 2 types of voltage. The picture on the right there with the big red blob on the left side there, that was 138 kV, and the lower lines you see there were 10 kV. Okay. Either one would obviously pose a major threat.
So how far did you have to stand clear of those lines?
25 feet.
25 feet.
Right.
And of course, that's something you had to take into consideration with your cranes.
Absolutely.
So this particular picture, if I look on the right, certainly shows that the crane is actually getting into that area.
It is.
How did you avoid that?
Well, first of all, I did that as a study, and I wanted to take that picture. I actually took it over to the power company, and they at first were reluctant to cover up those lines or to shut them off or do anything with them. So I wanted to show them that picture, saying here's your radius around the power lines, and here's where the crane is going to be at. And after they saw that, they realized that it was critical to at least cover them. And in fact, that was one of the things I had to do. We upped the crane size, put more counterweights on it, and moved it back just to add more safety to it.
Okay.
We didn't want to take any chances.
So they then insulated those wires?
They did, but that's
equation.
Yeah, they did, but that's still not bulletproof. It's just an added measure to ensure that arcing wasn't going to happen or safety.
So there was still a concern of arcing?
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. Especially dead of winter, it was cold. We would like
sure.
Everything was frozen, but
right.
No, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here we'll depict exactly what you were talking about as far as on the left portion of the screen, you had to bring in your rigging quite a bit, again, to accommodate for those high voltage wires. So that's a nice diagram showing where the actual bridge or spans were connected and were initially staged to the point where you had to your first pick, which would meet up with a common abutment. So both spans 1 and spans 2 will join up with this middle pier, correct? Yeah,
the pier on the other side, and you can see why the rigging was so critical, that it was shortened up just because it was such a tight working space with that bridge.
So not only the top rigging achieve a goal of minimizing any chance of arcing because it's made out of polyester, but also because of the cold temperatures, it's a lot easier to work with.
A lot easier to handle.
Than wire rope.
Right.
Even if you have gloves on, you still want to take care of your iron.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. All right. So we now talk and go over to the actual solution. we select the beams. We now go to plans at night and talk a little bit again about just your goals of completion, what you want to achieve, and what the end result was.
We just wanted it to be safe. We wanted it to be on time, and most was the safety of it, and we accomplished that. We had 40 minutes to do it. We did it in 20. There were no accidents. We didn't hit the power line. Everybody was happy, and it was a really great job. It was challenging, and I think that's why it was such a great job. Because
you mentioned it was one of your favorite favorite jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because of all the challenges with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I guess the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward.
It is, yeah. It was the more the challenge, and to see something happen safely and to be done right is really rewarding, if you will.
And I'll ask you the same questions I asked the folks at BMWC. Again, it went very smoothly, but what would you do differently?
You know, I don't think anything. I think we had the right guys down there. It made all the world of difference. They were awake. They were aware of what was going on. I think we did everything right, and we do it all over again.
It would have been better if it was a different type of gear, but that's not in our, that wasn't in our control at all.
But you're Chicago, and you're
yeah. I don't think you ever get used to it.
But yeah, right. Yeah. It's always cold.
Well, thank you again for sharing your case study with us and the folks, of course, out there. And of course, brings us back to lifting gear higher in the common link was now the modular spreader beams that both of you use, the compression style beams. Clearly, some of the reasons that our other customers will use those as well is the same reasons. They're lightweight, they're portable, they break down easily, they ship easy. In both of your projects, I believe you guys were able to use the same setup for different size modules, where it's not uncommon for these to break down fairly easily to have set up for different lengths bearing-to-bearing modules. In our fleet here, we have ranges anywhere from 3 all the way up to 100 feet, with capacities ranging all the way up to 1,000 tons. And one of the things that you guys both talked about, having top of 14, all of the top rigging and all the specs in order for you guys to plan appropriately, correct? So again, we're always delighted to play a role with your projects, no matter how significant or insignificant. But in this matter, again, great job for both of you guys. A little bit more about lifting gear higher for those folks that may not be familiar with us. We have over 50,000 pieces of rental equipment in stock. What makes us special is our process. It's consistent, both the certification and inspection of the equipment, both in and out. When a customer rents it, they bring it back. They can count on it coming back out safe and examined every time the exact same way. As far as those 50,000 pieces of equipment are concerned, again, nobody matches our inventory as far as the type of rigging, lifting, winching, or jacking equipment, but also the capacity range itself. So this is all we specialize in. And again, these folks here know it. And again, we appreciate you guys coming out here. And the last thing I want to add out here is just our testing capabilities down the lower right corner here. We have a dynamic testing machine that actually would test beyond what is now required by any OSHA, ANSI, or ASME standards. So with that said, now I'm going to pass it back to you, Joan and Mike, and open this up if anybody out there has any questions. Again, I want to sincerely thank the folks at BMWC and Clausen for coming out here and sharing your experiences with the rest of the folks.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jonah, if you could give me the screen for a minute, I'd appreciate it. I'd like to share with some of the folks how responsive Lifting Gear Hire was for just a 30-second display here. We'll put this up, and is that up on the screen? You see a compressor there?
Yeah, we got you.
we had a 70-ton compressor coming in on a ship with one of our clients, and we got it's one of those everything rolls downhill. We got a quick call, and 3 days this thing's going to show up, and we don't have a rigging diagram that we can work with, and the client's scrambling pretty hard. So we tackled the job. This thing was a really 63% distribution of weight. You can see the center of gravity is way off to one end, and it all came in crated in a box in its knockdown position, and so we had to get some gear together pretty quick. We called lifting gear hire. They responded very, very quickly. Noticed that the lifting lugs on one end is only 4 feet apart, and then the lifting lugs on the other end were 14 feet apart, and the gear, the slings had to go straight up off the corners because this thing was still in transit and they wanted to still keep it crated. So we took a look and got it. We called quickly. We got a 4-foot bar, a mod 50. We got 2 mod 110s, and lifting gear hire showed up very quickly with proof tested equipment. And then we rigged it up from the top end down. We had to have offset slings on the top end, which were approved based on load distribution. The load's 70 tons and a 44-foot long box. So we got everything organized. It was a dream. These guys came in and said, yeah, we got what you need and let's do it. So we rigged it up using one of the customer's 16-foot bars at one end for the 14-foot end. Used the LGH 4-foot bar at the other end, 2 46-foot bars. I mean, it's really great. You can get by the foot. You can get a bar or bars as you need assembled because of the modular system that they have. So we're able to fly this load up and over. It was didn't have all the sky in the world we wanted, but we're able to get it up and over the top of the ship and then down. There's a nice picture of the bars that they provided and all the shackles that came with the bars. Everything was ready to go. Everything was proof tested. We have all the certificates and documents right on the spot. Longshoremen are very particular course about making sure that the gear is qualified to be able to be used and so on. So this is just a little case study, and I just have to say that with the technical knowledge that the lifting gear folks have and their response time, accessibility to equipment, it just went very quickly. No special events, no issues, no concerns, no incidents, and we were able to place this right into the ship and get this thing right on the way. So it worked really well, and we appreciated very much the efforts and energy that LGH put on our behalf. So I'd like to open this up for questions for folks that anybody on the screen. Jonah, you have. You may have had questions typed in or sent in to you. If we have any, we'd like to pose them now for the folks that are on our panel. And if not, we'll go ahead and close out. So any questions come up, Jonah?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple that are pretty applicable, and I'm sure more than one person is wondering. So we'll start with this one. Joe is wondering, and this is regarding the Clawson Bridge project. He wanted to know, did the electric hazard influence the type of slings used, i.e. wire rope versus synthetic versus chain?
Yes, it did. Having non-conductive slings out there significantly had played a part of our decision on what to use. So we used those instead of using the IWRC cables.
Yeah, so the huge part of the selection was to ensure that they had the lowest possible conductive materials out there. And some things, just as from a rigging standpoint, let me toss this in really quick. We do kind of regard them as non-conductive. They are synthetic. If they get dirty or wet, they may conduct electricity, so be really cautious about how they're selected. But for sure, this was the lowest conductive type equipment versus chain slings or wire rope slings or other slings. So I think there was a great choice that Clawson made for the rigging selection for that. So good point, and it was a good selection, guys.
All right, great. We have one more here from Mark. He wants to know if the LGH beams that were provided were proof tested or load tested, and is this common to have a beam proof tested?
That's a great question, Mark. They're exam certified every time they come back. There is an option to actually have them load tested, although that's a service that we don't necessarily provide here. We can send those out and put those with a provider. More often than not, that people opt not to have that, but clearly it's something that if you needed, we could have that available for you.
Just as a point of information, ASME B30.20, the low bulk lifting devices, they don't require proof testing of the custom lifting devices for standard work. If they need to be operationally tested if they move or hinge like a pair of grabs or tongs, but load testing is not required. However, I will say that for the it's still a requirement that the gear be under 1926 for construction, that they call them custom devices, and these do fall into that category, and they do require proof testing, but that's really on the first day that they're really used prior to. So it is a requirement for spreader bars, lifting beams used in construction to be proof tested, but that's a one-time event. It's not on a per lift or per project basis. So lifting gear, they meet that requirement as the bars and shackles and lifting and the in links and all end caps are all tested prior to ever their first use, and they do meet that requirement. But it is not a requirement on a regular basis every project or every lift by lift unless the customer or the project site requires it. So their gear comes out with the certification, and it does meet the initial requirements. Any other questions, Jonah?
I think we're okay. We just crept over the hour point, so thanks, Mark and Joe, for those questions. Like I said, I think more than one person was probably wondering the same thing, so I appreciate that. I don't have anything else coming in here, so I would just like to express thanks again to Pat and to the folks who joined us in sharing their case studies with us, and the audience, really. I think, as I mentioned in my intro, it's definitely applicable to multiple markets and industries. So, yeah, I'm glad everybody enjoyed it, and that's all I had. So, Mike, Pat, if you guys have anything else?
Go ahead, Pat.
No, again, I just wanted to extend our appreciation again for the folks that came and joined us, as well as you guys as well. Just to add on to that quickly, I think, Mike, you had mentioned the expertise of lifting gear and our reps. We've got a very, very high tenure as it pertains to the folks that work here, specific to the sales and the customer service department. And I just recently held a training with 12 individuals from our company that are randomly chosen to come back for more training. And again, I love the exercise of talking about their experience. And within that 12, we had almost near 100 years of rigging experience. So, when folks are looking for answers and quality solutions to their equipment, again, we base them on suitability, not profitability. So, a testament to our experience. So we appreciate you guys pointing it out. But again, thank you very much for having us. We had a blast. It was a lot of fun through this process.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody, for participating today. We hope it met your needs. We wanted to really show you that there are solutions to rigging that we don't have to inventory everything. It's really actually much simpler to rent for short duration, get the right parts and pieces in place, use them, send them back, and they're pre-qualified, and quality is certainly there. So it's a very efficient way to help solve some problems on various projects in whatever location type, whether it's construction, refineries, power plants, etc. So it's nice to have access to this gear sort of at the end of the phone call, and we can get it rolling out and get it to location. So as an industry user and a consultation group, we love having Lifting Gear Hire around so that we can help get those solutions to those customers, and it's really a much less labor intense in some cases, and cost efficiency is a huge benefit. So great to have you guys with us, and we're really glad that you're doing what you're doing and have technical expertise to help us out as well. So thanks everybody for being with us today, and we look forward to having you join us on another monthly webinar. And this webinar, Jonah, I believe has been captured and recorded for future use, and other folks can access it downstream. Is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay,
and we can send out an email on how to access that coming up. So if you're registered, we'll send that out to you. It'll come from me directly, actually.
All right, terrific. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll sign off now, and we hope everybody has a great Labor Day weekend. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.